Hi, friends. Welcome again to another episode of Beyond the Clouds Edge to Edge Transformation. And as we have discussed before, this transformation is happening on multiple dimensions, not only in the dimension of software, AI, but as we just experienced the pandemic, the whole drug development process, getting medicines, has also expedited. Otherwise, we would not have had medicine for COVID. So among the pioneers who worked on new technologies is Dr. Dinesh Patel. I got to know him when he was working on transdermal technologies. Dinesh, tell us a little bit about you. How did you become the Dinesh we know today? What was your journey like?
So I was born and raised in Zambia, which is in Central Africa. And growing up, it was a British colony at that time called Northern Rhodesia. And we did have segregation in that country. So I grew up in a country that had segregation. And up to our high school, we were in Asian schools. So there were only Indians, but they used to call it Asian schools. Our teachers were Indians and white, but the students were all Indians. And after independence in 1960, schools got integrated, and for the first time, we were in a classroom with white kids, with black kids. So it was a big transition for us. I mean, it's not that we didn't see any black people or white people while growing up, but in the schools, we were all segregated. Obviously, there's some discrimination when you're segregated, but it wasn't that blatant like in South Africa where you were not allowed to go in certain areas. But, that impacts how you look at the world when you grow up. After that, after completing my high school, I went to India for 4 years, got my bachelor's degree there. And then since 1973, I've been in the US. Got my Ph.D. at the University of Michigan, and then worked in the industry. From the very beginning, I had decided that I was not going to work for somebody for a very long time. So I started thinking about what I can do on my own. And in 1985, I moved to Utah to start a company called TheraTech. At that time, I knew about 2 or 3 people in the entire state of Utah. But the main reason I moved here is that my professor, Dr. Higuchi, who is a world-renowned pharmaceutical scientist, had moved to University of Utah from Michigan, and we decided to start a company together. So starting with just $40,000 was quite a challenge, right? I didn't know anybody here, didn't know the banking system. We had to do everything on our own. Unlike a lot of people, we did not take any venture capital because, first of all, in Utah, there wasn't much venture capital in 1985. There was probably one fund with 5 million or so under management. So there were not too many opportunities to raise money from the VCs. So we went the corporate route, and at that time, what we were trying to do, drug delivery system, that area was quite hot. So we were fortunate to get early investment from Pfizer. And after that, of course, we had investments from several major pharma companies. I took the company public in 1992. We were acquired in 2000 by Watson Pharmaceuticals. I didn't want to move, so I just said, hey, I'm going to stay here in Salt Lake City. And by that time, I had become quite involved politically, socially in the local culture, with the government, with the university. Salt Lake City became home. Since there wasn't much venture capital in Utah, in 2000, we started a fund called V-Spring Capital. I was one of the founding partners. I was there for 15 years. and we managed about 400 million. So our fund had technology and life sciences. So since in all these funds, you have to vote on every deal. So I became quite familiar with the technology field. I know the business case and how to use technology in a business. So once I retired from that fund, I started doing my own angel investing, and I'm investing in pharmaceutical companies, in medical devices, in software companies. I have about 70 or so investments. So I do have a very broad base of investment, and that results in my having to understand a lot of the new technologies that are coming up. And I like working with the younger kids at the university because they keep you on your toes. You can't just depend on what you learned 30 years ago. Even biotechnology field has moved so much. In the heydays when I was there, they were talking about nanotech. Now, you're talking about gene editing and all kind of new things. Artificial intelligence has come in a big way in drug development. Previously, it was trial and error. You did lots and lots of drugs, and if you get a successful hit, you try and develop it. Today, a lot of that work is done in machine learning and AI. Now, on the flip side, I think everybody that's raising money or wants to talk big will say, I'm doing machine learning and I'm doing AI. How much is real? Who knows? It's something that you got to really look through. I get so many business plans today with AI and machine learning in the biotech or in the life science space. Some of the areas it makes a huge impact, right? When you're talking about behavioral science, right? There, the artificial intelligence does help a lot. Behavioral patterns can predict what may happen. Are you headed towards depression? Are you, what is going on in your life? A lot of that, the predictability is pretty good there. I think you will see that more in the next 5 to 10 years. Are you going to replace the doctors? No, but I think a lot of the background work, a lot of what your makeup is can be developed through artificial intelligence. Now, again, artificial intelligence, just like what we were doing before, garbage in is garbage out. So you have to be very careful about what kind of data you're using to predict your models. It's a very exciting space, technology-wise. Well, 85 when I started the company, and if I had a computer on my desk, some of the people would say, whoa, you're using a computer. Well, today, everybody has computing power. And if you don't know, then you're in trouble. And I do get into trouble on a lot of these issues because understanding of this technology, for somebody in the 70s is still challenging. Some people say, are you retired? I said, yeah, I set my own time. Right? I go to the office when I want to. I don't have to go, but I have 60 or 70 companies. I'm invested in about 30, 40 funds, and I don't keep staff. So I got to do everything on my own. And I like that. I don't like to depend on somebody. Politically, I'm very active. Locally, I'm very active. Utah is a Republican state, and I am very active and very senior within the Republican group in Utah. I've been an advisor to the last 4 governors. I'm active at the universities, at University of Utah and University of Michigan. I'm involved with our local, the Indian community through the Hindu temples. I'm involved in the Science Museum here. I've been on the Opera and the Symphony Board. A lot of different activities. Once or twice a month, I give advice to entrepreneurs. They just come and say, here's what I'm trying to do. Is there something I'm doing right or wrong? So I spend quite a bit of my time doing that. And again, I find that very fulfilling. In India, our family has a charity hospital and a school. It's a 100-bed hospital and a school with 1,200 kids. So I go there every year, 2 to 3 months. And, in a small village of 3,000 people, our community health center has become a benchmark for India. We are one of the best as far as providing services, cleanliness. Our patients are so grateful to get the services that we provide. In our schools, the kids learn computer from K through 12. The minute they come into our school, they have to get on the computers. They're learning it. We recently introduced a program called Skill Angels, which, again, instead of just cramming what you have learned, which is a normal method in India, this is more using logic. You got to think fast. And our kids are becoming so smart by the time they finish 6 or 7 years of this course. Just now, when I was there, the person who founded this company happened to be there. And one of the kids answered a question, and he said, "Do you realize this is a question for IAS exam?" So that's the level these kids are getting involved with. So, long journey, a lot of different things. My biggest fulfillment is, helping poor people in India. I feel that's a big blessing. And locally, I'm very active in a lot of community activities, and I like to work with entrepreneurs.
Wow, that's quite a journey. And I want to say thank you. The first time we raised money, you were there at every step of the way as the most active board member. We knew the technology. We really didn't know much business at all. What amazed me was how patient you were with people, with us, and with all the entrepreneurs. A lot of entrepreneurs come starry eyed with new ideas, but business acumen is lacking. How do you help? I know how you helped us. Do you continue to see a lot of these kinds of kids who have never done business but have that enthusiasm around new technologies? And how do you help them?
That's probably the area where you can contribute the most, right? Everybody has this hockey stick. Everybody thinks they're going to make $1 billion company. What I try to do is be a very honest broker. If it's not a good idea, just tell them up front, this is not going to work. You got to start thinking a little bit differently. And I think they appreciate that instead of just sugarcoating everything. Even as a VC, I didn't like to take 6 months to say no. If I don't like an idea, I just say, look, this is not going to work for me. Here's the reason why. And then they appreciate that instead of wasting their time and my time. The key issue with any entrepreneur is, have you developed something that is needed? Is there a need for your product versus a nice to have? I mean, a nice to have idea is never going to go anywhere compared to a must have idea, filling a gap. There is a need for what you're doing. And at that time, again, if you look at the food delivery market, I think there was a company that started 15, 20 years ago and went belly up because the timing wasn't right. Today, everybody's doing grocery deliveries and all. And the people who started 20 years ago and went belly up must have been thinking, geez, why didn't we succeed? And that's a timing issue also, right? So the right time, right place makes a lot of difference. And with the younger kids, when I invest, I'm on the board, and a lot of them, I tell them that, don't be surprised if in 3 to 4 years you'll be replaced, because again, the skill set for running a business is different than when you're developing a technology. The other place where I find this very common is with faculty, right? The faculty always think they know everything, even if they don't understand. So it's always something that you got to tell them upfront saying, this is what you don't know, and at some point we got to bring in a seasoned business executive.
So, Dinesh, you have lived in many different places. You started off in schools that were segregated. You saw Zambia becoming independent. Then you lived in India for some time. Then you were in the US, in the Midwest, and finally in almost what was then called Mormon country, Utah. How has your life changed? I mean, did it change your personality, or were you the same Dinesh all along as you went to all these different places?
You need to be who you are, right? If you try to be a different person in different location, you're going to be messed up. You got to be who you are. From the time I was in high school, I had already said, okay, I'm going to start my own business at some point. India was a short stint for me. I've only spent about 4.5 years in India. Most of my life has been in the US, right? Over 50 years here. But even in Salt Lake City, yeah, it's a Mormon country, but not only we adjusted to the local community, but we got them involved in our Hindu temple. We do Diwali at the governor's mansion. We've been doing it long before anybody in this country, right? I think we did our 15th Diwali celebration at the governor's mansion. So we got them to understand what the Hindu culture is, what Diwali is. I've had John Huntsman at our temple, Senator Hatch, some of these senior leaders from LDS Church. They've been to our temple. I tell people, you have to maintain your culture, but learn from the other cultures that are around there. If I'm in a place that are 60% Mormon, I don't have to become Mormon to be successful. I can be successful with who I am. That's how I work.
I still remember the time when you approached the Latter-day Saints and they contributed to the building of the first temple in, I think, not far from Salt Lake. And that is an amazing. Could you tell us a little bit about how that happened?
So that's the Krishna temple, which was built in, it's actually in a 90% or 95% Mormon area. The local commissioner had seen the temple coming up. And on that particular, at the Krishna temple, we got the money because of the commissioner. He was quite influential. But for the Ganesh temple in Salt Lake City, I was sitting on a board with the person that manages the financial things for the LDS Church is called a bishop. So the bishopric manages billions of dollars. And Bishop Burton and I sat on the committee together. So I said, Bishop, can you help me build this temple? And, they gave us 25 to get started. And then I went back when we were building the culture center. And at that time, Haiti, had gone under crisis, right? There are a lot of issues going there. And he said, we're spending all our money in Haiti. We're not looking at other charities. And I told him, look, Bishop, you helped me start this. You got to help me finish it. And he personally took my application and gave us another 25,000. So, the personal connections do help. The India Culture Center that was built in Salt Lake City had 50% of the money coming from non-Indians. Building relationships, I give when they come. I may give one, they give me 10 because there's a much larger population. But it has really helped us and worked for me.
That's truly an amazing story. And I recall even the labor in terms of building. People came, volunteered from the LDS Church, which is truly remarkable. So it's such a story of diversity and people coming together to enrich everybody. Speaking of which, you started TheraTech at a time when there were very few transdermal technology companies. At one point, Alza was acquired by Johnson & Johnson. So you had formidable competition. What made you go through the whole thing, even without venture money, with support from big companies? How did you manage through all the technology risk and the challenges that it presented?
So at that time, one of the key issues was getting drugs across the skin. There's a lot of talk about, oh, everything is going to go transdermal. And we realized that the size of the drug, the amount of drug that you need to transport was a limiting factor. And so we worked on just enhancing the ability to take drugs across the skin. And again, at that time, even the Alza was really big, they were the only ones. So there wasn't much competition per se. And we decided to work on testosterone as our first product. And at that time, the male hormone replacement market was about 40 million. And Alza had the first product for that, but they had a scrotal patch. So I said, okay, if I can develop a patch, testosterone patch that sits anywhere on your body, then the scrotum, I have a winner. And that's how we went. But today, the male hormone replacement market is multi-billion-dollar. When we started, like I said, we didn't have too many companies with the expertise in transdermal delivery. The market that we approached was relatively small, so we were not worried about people coming in. And the technology is what, we had a lot of patents around our technology.
I also recall this internet company called Ancestry.com, where you and WeSpring Capital invested. And that's a very interesting turnaround story. Can you tell us how the whole thing happened and how the company came out really successful?
So Ancestry.com was capitalizing on the database that is with the LDS Church. They traced 3 or 4 generations, 5 generations down the line. They were not digitized. Everything was on paper, and they were going towards digitization. And that's when Ancestry.com was started. They put those data on computers, so you can do computer-based search. The company obviously had technology and origins in Utah. They went to the Bay Area, put up a fancy building. They were going to go public, and the market crashed. There were 3 or 4 investors from Utah, WeSpring Capital, and a couple of other VCs. We brought them back. We saved the company by putting in some money. What they were trying to do was something that a lot of people had interest. So it was not that our technology salvaged them. What we did is brought them back, cut back their expenses, put it back on a solid business plan. So the business area, change of the business plan and all that helped Ancestry grow. And today, of course, it's thriving and doing extremely well.
In fact, in the early days, it was all about tracing people and ancestry. But then I believe that you compete even with the DNA company and effectively have formed multiple business streams, right?
Yeah. So again, even Ancestry.com does a lot of DNA analysis, make sure that what the paper is showing is actually true. A lot of their business today is on DNA sequencing. And that's another place where, it was 100,000 to sequence. Today, it's in hundreds of dollars. Generational change in technology has reduced the cost so much that everybody can get their DNA analyzed.
I see you going full blast even today. What makes you get up early in the morning enthusiastically and do these kinds of things? What is it that motivates you today?
I am a constant learner. I like to learn. And the best place to learn is working with the younger kids who are technology-wise far smarter than you, but business-wise, they need your help. So I'm learning all the time, and that keeps me young. Most of my startups have come out from university technologies where I have mentored the teams at the university, and then I invest. I like to invest mostly in companies where I have worked with them, creating the technology and then building up a company around that. I think a good example is a company called Xenocor, where we've developed a disposable laparoscope. Now, laparoscopy is a very, very large field. The current technology, you have to buy equipment which is 300 to 400,000. And it's a tower. It's always, you refer to it as a tower. We are replacing that entire tower with something that's size of an iPhone and a cost of 25,000. Interestingly, when we first developed this, it was even half the size of an iPhone. I said, nobody's going to believe that we can do something this great from a small device. So I said, you got to make it a little bit bigger. The inventor is a surgeon. And one night he had to go on a call. He was called to go to the hospital. And he opened up his iPhone and the light, right? You use the LED light. I struck to him, say, this light is just as good as the one that I use in my laparoscope. Is there some way we can use that plus the pictures that you get in and the videos that you take on an iPhone are just as good as what I need? Can we somehow combine all this? So that was the origin. And now, we have one of the best disposable laparoscope. If you reuse them, you worry about infection. It happens quite often. In our case, it's just a disposable laparoscope. We started out with thinking of the third world countries as a place to go. Third world countries cannot afford $300,000, $400,000 tower. Our product would be easy there. Then we realized that that's also the market in the US. Everybody is going towards disposable. Everybody's cost conscious. So we actually now are totally focused on getting the product on the market within the next 12, 15 months. But it's an interesting story where I was the first investor in there, and I'm considered a co-founder because I worked with the team right from the start. It's been 7 years since I've been working on that project. But that's the kind of projects I like.
That is amazing.
I got involved with a software company based in India. And this was in revenue cycle management. On that one also, I was one of the first investors. And I actually just invested in the entrepreneur because he kept coming to Salt Lake from Chennai and said, you really need to invest. I didn't know a lot about that space, but where I was able to help him, one of my portfolio, or V-String portfolio company, it was called Mediconnect Global. And they were doing a lot of work in India. And I said, okay, is there some way or some technology that the software company in India is much better than what we were doing? So when we sold Mediconnect Global, the contract that we had, a large contract, was given to this revenue cycle management company. And suddenly their revenues became, from say a couple of million to 20, 30 million. And they were able to exit at a very nice multiple. So for me, this was one of the bigger exits. It was 40 times the money that I put in because I was one of the first money in. But that's where more of a business savvy than technology savvy. Just help them get that done.
Speaking of business and charity, I remember the school that you started in your ancestral town, both the school and along with that, the hospital. It has one of the best hospitals with the most sophisticated equipment in the entire state of Gujarat, which is where the prime minister comes from in India.
Right.
And also, I found it curious, it also has the best gym, Olympic style gym, not only in the state of Gujarat, but better than what we have in Bombay. How did you manage to pull that off?
So the hospital was my father's dream. He wanted a hospital in our village. It's a village of 3,000 people, but 50 or 60,000 people surround that hospital within a few miles. So he felt very strongly that we should build a hospital. At that time, we were charging 1 rupee to see our doctors. Even today, we charge just 1 rupee. We haven't increased our fees. But the reason why our hospital has the very high standard, and you visited it, so you know the hospital, we worked very closely with some physicians from Utah, particularly a husband and wife team, Dr. Bernard Fassel and Dr. Julia. Bernard has been there 40 times. So every time he goes there, he tries to improve the quality of care. We didn't want to have tourist doctors who come there for 4 or 5 days, do a few things and go away. We wanted somebody with whom we can build a long-term relationship. And so that's what we have done. And you see the result in our hospital, extremely clean, top-notch service. We were one of the first paperless hospitals in India. The software that was developed, we worked with a local company, but instead of trying to adapt their system to our system, we made them develop our system using their software. And now they're selling it all over the world because for rural areas, we have developed one of the best electronic medical record systems. There too, what bothered me every time I went there is a big pile of paper. I told them the next time I come, I say, if I see any paper, I'm just going to throw it away. And that really got them going. And in 12 months, we went totally paperless.
It's amazing. In fact, there was no requirement, I believe, at that time for electronic health records. And now the whole country and many parts of the world are going paperless.
Both Bernard and Ali, when they go there, they work with our nurses and physicians on how to use the software. So we went ground up instead of usually if you put in a big system here, you have to adapt to their way of use. We made it so that they develop what we need because our needs are different than what would be in a big hospital. They found out the way we developed this thing, they are now selling it to large hospitals as well. On the school side, K through 12, about 60% of our kids are learning in English, 40% in Gujarati. And in the beginning, I thought it would be crazy to try and do this in a small village. What we have done is we only cater to kids from the surrounding villages. And we have about 12 to 15 buses. They pick up the kids from around there. From the beginning, we had emphasis on education, on culture or religious activities, music, and athletics. So we had started on athletics right from the beginning. And in the early days, they were mostly field hockey, soccer. We just put in cricket. Some of our kids were really interested in gymnastics. And we didn't have a very good facility there. So we decided to build one of the best facilities in the country. And today, our kids are competing nationally from a village of 3,000 people in a school with 1,200 kids. The other area we focused was on archery because we do cater to tribal kids and their ability in archery is very good. So we've given them the facilities to develop their skills. Now, while doing all this, we also maintain very high educational standards. Sometimes it's challenging because you bring the tribal kids who are way behind. We do a buddy system. So if some kid is way behind, we put the best student with that and say, it's your job to bring that student up. In India, it's very common not to teach anything and then have them come to your class for tutoring. We don't allow that. So all our kids learn on their own, or we have after school class, but no teacher can make money tutoring. So they give them the best education.
I know you've always been looking at new technologies. What promising technologies are you interested in and are working in at this time?
Well, everybody talks about ChatGPT and AI. I think there's a lot of promise with AI. Somebody talked to me yesterday and said, we have developed an AI model that can predict if you're going to get macular degeneration. Well, that could be huge if you can see the trends early. ChatGPT, I haven't gotten too involved. It's fairly new to me, so I'm trying to learn more. If I want to do a business contract, I just try the ChatGPT route, and half of it is good, half of it is garbage. It gives you a starting point. So that's an area, ChatGPT, AI, everybody's concerned about. The University of Utah just put in $100 million commitment for AI. And the museum I'm involved with is putting up an exhibit about responsible AI. Because as soon as you talk about AI, you have responsible AI. So for people to understand, what does it mean? What are the good and bad points of AI? So we're trying to explore that. And so as the exhibition comes up, hopefully I will learn a little bit more about that.
You're catching up with us really fast. In fact, I've been learning these technologies along with some of the inventors, researchers. So you're coming up really fast. Well, it's always a delight, Dinesh, talking to you not only about technology, but how your mind works, how you see opportunities, where seldom people even think about it. And may you continue to work with people. May you continue to bring people, technology, and business together, along with focus on community empowerment. So thank you for all the work you've done, and thank you for giving us the time to talk about it.
The greatest satisfaction you get is when you give, when you see the impact, when you see a child from a very poor home become a doctor or become an officer because of the help you've given along the way. When you see a child being saved, you feel grateful. That's what makes you feel good about yourself. So everybody can do a little bit. You don't have to build a hospital. You can always do some charity. One good turn deserves another. So keep doing it. Success will come.
Thanks a lot, Dinesh. And to people listening out there, this is the reason I talk to people from around the world and from different places, different backgrounds. The easiest way we can co-create the future is to participate and to learn from each other. So please come forward, tell us your stories. I'm always curious, I'm always interested. And Dinesh, once again, we haven't seen you face to face in a long time. So maybe you should make a trip out here to the Silicon Valley, or we'll have to come to maybe the Sundance area in Utah.